Danica and Deja Collins may look like just a pair of quiet black twins, but when three white football players corner them behind the gym, laughing, filming, grabbing, they think the girls will cry and beg. They have no idea who they're messing with, because Danica and Deja aren't just cheerleaders. They're fourth-degree black belts, trained since they could walk, disciplined, dangerous, and done staying silent. But when the girls fight back and win, the school punishes them, not the boys. Now the system is rigged against them, and fighting back isn't just physical anymore. How do you defeat bullies backed by an entire institution? And what happens when two sisters trained for war decide they're not backing down? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The crowd erupted as Danica and Deja Collins struck their final pose, their burgundy and gold uniforms glittering under the gymnasium lights. Sweat glistened on their dark skin, but their matching braids remained perfectly in place, not a strand out of alignment. The twins held their smiles, chests heaving slightly from the intense routine they'd just completed. "That's how it's done!" Coach Riley shouted from the sidelines, her clipboard clutched tight against her chest. The rest of the Millstone High cheerleading squad rushed to embrace the twins as the judges conferred at their table. Danica caught her breath first, her analytical mind already reviewing each movement. "How was the timing on that last flip sequence?" she whispered to Deja. "Perfect," Deja replied, squeezing her sister's hand. "You know it was perfect." Her eyes sparkled with the fierce joy she always felt after nailing a performance. The gymnasium was packed with parents and students from schools across the region. Most of the Millstone football team sat in the bleachers, though they looked more annoyed than supportive. Logan Mitchell, the quarterback, kept checking his phone instead of watching. "And now, the moment we've all been waiting for," the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "The winner of this year's regional championship." Coach Riley gripped the twins' shoulders. The whole squad linked hands, forming a chain of burgundy and gold. Millstone High School! The explosion of cheers drowned out everything else. Danica and Deja hugged each other tight as their teammates jumped and screamed around them. Coach Riley wiped tears from her eyes as she accepted the gleaming trophy. "This is the first time in 15 years we've taken regionals," Coach Riley announced to the squad, her voice thick with emotion. "And it wouldn't have happened without our Collins twins. Their dedication, their precision, their leadership, they've raised the bar for everyone." Deja beamed at the praise, while Danica ducked her head modestly. They'd worked hard for this moment, spending countless extra hours in the gym perfecting their routines. "Pictures! Pictures!" called the local newspaper photographer. The twins posed with their teammates, holding the trophy between them. Their smiles were genuine but reserved. They'd learned early to be careful about drawing too much attention at their mostly white school. As the crowd began to disperse, they heard snippets of conversation from the bleachers where the football players sat. "Must be nice getting all that attention," Brent Ashford's voice carried clearly. "When we actually work for our wins." "Careful," Chase Dunning snickered. "They might hear you with those braids all wound up tight." The twins pretended not to hear, focusing instead on helping pack up the squad's equipment. They'd dealt with comments like these before, little jabs meant to diminish their achievements. Monday morning came too quickly. The trophy gleamed in its new home in the school's display case, right next to the football team's collection of past victories. Danica and Deja walked down the main hallway, their textbooks clutched close. "Did you hear about the budget meeting?" Logan Mitchell's voice carried from where he leaned against his locker with Brent and Chase. "Coach Thompson says if we don't make state this year, they might redirect funds to other programs." "Yeah, like cheerleading." Brent spat the word like it tasted bad. "Because jumping around in sparkly outfits is totally the same as actual sports." Chase laughed too loudly at that, his eyes darting to the twins as they passed. Danica kept her gaze forward, her steps measured and calm. But Deja noticed how her sister's jaw tightened, the only visible sign of her irritation. "Just ignore them," Deja whispered, though her own hands had curled into fists at her sides. "They're not worth it." The twins continued down the hallway, their matching burgundy and gold cheerleading jackets setting them apart from the crowd. Other students called out congratulations about their win, but the twins just nodded politely and kept walking. They could feel the football players' eyes on their backs, could hear their continued whispers and smirks. But Danica and Deja had learned long ago to pick their battles carefully. They exchanged knowing glances as they headed toward the gym for morning practice, their expressions neutral, but their minds already calculating. The heavy doors of the gymnasium swung shut behind them, leaving the whispers and smirks in the hallway where they belonged. For now, at least, they had work to do. The afternoon sun beat down on the practice field as the cheerleading squad ran through their new routine. Danica and Deja moved in perfect sync, their bodies flowing through each motion with practiced grace. Sweat dampened their burgundy practice uniforms, but their focus never wavered. "Okay, let's take it from the pyramid transition," Coach Riley called out, clipboard in hand. "Remember, we need to be even sharper than regionals if we want to dominate at state." The squad repositioned themselves, with the twins taking their spots as base supports. Just as they were about to start, loud laughter erupted from the sidelines. Logan Mitchell and Brent Ashford had wandered over from football practice, still in their practice jerseys. They lounged against the fence, making no effort to hide their stares. "Hey, Collins twins," Brent called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "Those uniforms seem a little tight." "Not that anyone's complaining." Several of the other cheerleaders shifted uncomfortably. Danica and Deja remained in position, their expressions unchanged. "Maybe they should demonstrate that split move again," Logan added with a smirk. "You know, for team spirit." Coach Riley strode toward the fence, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by steel. "This is a closed practice. You boys need to leave. Now." "Oh, come on, Coach." Logan's fake innocent tone made Deja's stomach turn. "We're just showing support for our award-winning squad." "Yeah," Brent chimed in. "Since they're getting all the attention lately, might as well see what all the fuss is about." "I said leave," Coach Riley's voice hardened, "or I'll report this harassment to Principal Stevens." Logan laughed. "Harassment? We're just watching practice. Right, Brent?" "Right." "Besides," Brent's grin widened, "maybe if you focused more on coaching and less on being so uptight, they wouldn't look so stiff out there." Several of the cheerleaders gasped. Coach Riley's face flushed red. "That's it. Practice is over for today, girls. Hit the showers." She pulled out her phone, already dialing the principal's office. As the squad gathered their things, Logan and Brent continued their commentary, just loud enough to hear. "Look at them run away," Brent sneered. "So much for all that confidence." "Guess they only perform when the spotlight's on," Logan added. Danica touched Deja's arm, feeling her sister's muscles coiled tight with anger. "Not here," she whispered. "Not now." The twins walked to the locker room with measured steps, their heads held high despite the continued jeers behind them. They changed in silence, their movements automatic after years of routine. Later that evening, the Collins family gathered around their modest dining room table. The twins' father, Marcus Collins, had just finished serving his famous chicken and rice, while their Aunt Renee poured glasses of lemonade. "How was practice today?" Marcus asked, passing the green beans to Deja. The twins exchanged glances. Danica spoke first, her voice carefully neutral. "Some of the football players showed up. Logan Mitchell and Brent Ashford." Marcus's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "The quarterback and that rich kid? What did they want?" "They were just being jerks," Deja said, pushing her rice around her plate. "Making stupid comments about our uniforms and the way we move." "Coach Riley tried to make them leave," Danica added. But they just made fun of her, too. Aunt Renee, who had been quietly eating, set down her fork. Her dark eyes studied the twins intently, noting their controlled movements, the tension in their shoulders. "Did they touch you?" Renee's question was soft, but direct. "No," both girls answered quickly. "Not yet," Deja muttered under her breath. Marcus frowned, his protective instincts visible in his clenched jaw. "Maybe I should talk to their parents, or the principal." "Dad, no," Danica shook her head. "That'll just make things worse. We can handle it." "Besides," Deja added, stabbing a green bean with more force than necessary, "Logan's dad is on the school board, and Brent's family donates a ton of money to the athletic department. They never get in real trouble." Aunt Renee remained silent, but her gaze never left the girls. She watched how they held themselves, how they controlled their anger, how they chose their words. Her own hands, calloused from decades of martial arts training, remained perfectly still on the table. "Still," Marcus insisted, "if they're harassing you—" "We're fine, Dad," Danica cut in. "Really? They're just trying to get a reaction because they're mad about the attention the squad's getting." "Yeah," Deja forced a smile. "They're just being typical entitled jerks. Nothing we haven't dealt with before." The conversation shifted to other topics. Marcus's work at the auto shop, Aunt Renee's community law clinic, upcoming tests at school. But the tension lingered, especially in the way Renee watched her nieces, noting every subtle sign of their contained fury. The twins continued eating, their movements as precise and controlled as their cheerleading routine, while their aunt's sharp eyes followed their every move. The morning sun filtered through the high windows of the girls' locker room, casting long shadows across the rows of metal lockers. Danica adjusted her burgundy practice uniform, double-checking the bow in her hair when something caught her eye in the mirror. Her hands froze mid-motion. Taped to the glass was a crudely printed meme. The image showed black cheerleaders edited to look like monkeys, with racist text scrawled beneath. Danica's stomach clenched, but her face remained carefully blank as she reached up and pulled it down. The paper crinkled in her fist. She glanced around the empty locker room, noting how the image had been placed at exactly her eye level. This wasn't random. This was targeted. The locker room door swung open as Deja walked in. Her phone clutched tight in her hand. Her usually bright expression was dark with anger. "Did you see what they did?" Deja thrust her phone toward her sister. Danica smoothed out the crumpled paper. "You mean, besides this?" "They added me to some group chat." Deja's voice shook slightly as she pulled up the messages. "Look at what they're posting." Danica leaned in to watch. Videos filled the screen, clips from their practices and competitions, but edited with racist music and captions. Comments from Logan, Brent, and Chase filled the chat, each one more degrading than the last. "Ghetto routine," Deja read, her voice tight. "Maybe they should stick to hip-hop. They even edited monkey sounds over our regional performance." Danica's jaw clenched. "How many people are in this chat?" "At least 20. Deja scrolled through the member list. Mostly football players, but some other guys too. Chase added me this morning, probably by accident. He removed me right after, but I already took screenshots. The twins stood in silence, sharing the weight of this latest attack. The locker room felt smaller suddenly, less safe. "We should tell Coach Riley," Danica said finally, folding the meme carefully and tucking it into her bag. "Why? So she can report it and nothing happens?" "Again?" Deja slammed her locker shut. "You know Logan's dad will just say it was a joke, or claim someone else did it." "We need to document everything," Danica insisted. "Build a record." "A record of what?" "How they can get away with anything." Deja's voice rose slightly before she caught herself. She took a deep breath, centering herself like they'd been taught. "Sorry, I'm tired of being quiet about it." Danica touched her sister's arm. I know. Me too. They finished changing in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The morning passed in a blur of classes, with pointed looks and whispered comments following them through the halls. Logan and his friends made sure to bump into them between periods, always with that same smirking, "my bad," that fooled no one. By afternoon practice, the tension had built to a physical presence. Coach Riley noticed their distraction during warm-ups. "Everything okay, girls?" she asked during water break. "You seem off today." "We're fine," they answered in unison, their practiced response automatic. After practice, the twins stayed behind as usual for extra stretching. The back lot behind the gym was their preferred spot. Quiet, away from prying eyes, with enough space to really extend their muscles. As they walked across the empty parking lot, the sound of footsteps and low laughter drifted from behind them. Danica didn't need to turn around to know who it was. 3 sets of footsteps, trying to move quietly and failing. The laughter grew closer. Paper crinkled, probably more printed memes. A phone camera clicked. Deja's shoulders tensed, but she kept walking, matching her sister's steady pace. They'd been trained too well to show fear or lose composure. The back lot came into view, isolated and empty as always. The perfect place for extra practice, away from distractions. Or the perfect place for an ambush. More laughter. Closer now. The sound of a video starting to play. Their regional routine with those edited sounds. Danica felt the shift in the air, the weight of malicious intent growing heavier with each step. Without looking back, she flexed her hands at her sides, subtly cracking each knuckle one by one. The familiar pop of joints loosening was oddly comforting. She could sense Deja doing the same, their twin instincts perfectly aligned as always. Years of training hummed just beneath their skin, carefully contained but ready. The footsteps behind them quickened slightly. Logan, Brent, and Chase were barely trying to hide their approach now. Their confidence built on months of unchecked harassment and a lifetime of privilege. The twins kept walking, their pace unchanged, their movements fluid and controlled. The backlot waited ahead, empty and isolated, just as it always was this time of day. The backlot was eerily quiet as Danica and Deja reached the chain-link fence that marked their usual stretching spot. The footsteps behind them grew louder, more deliberate, no longer trying to be subtle. "Hey there, Collins girls," Logan's voice dripped with fake friendliness. "Having a private practice session?" The twins turned slowly, maintaining perfect posture. 3 phones were already out, recording. Logan stood in the center, flanked by Brent and Chase. Their football Letterman jackets gleamed in the late afternoon sun. "You know," Brent said, taking a step closer, "we've been watching your routines. Real interesting moves you got there." Chase hung back slightly, his phone wavering as he filmed. His usual smirk seemed forced, nervous. "Leave us alone," Danica said quietly, her voice level. "We're just trying to practice." Logan's smile widened. "Oh, we want to see you practice. Up close and personal." He moved suddenly, shoving Deja hard against the fence. The metal rattled. "Hey!" Danica started forward, but Brent was already there, grabbing at her skirt with one hand while keeping his phone steady with the other. "Come on, show us those special moves," Brent laughed. "Maybe do a little dance for the camera?" Time seemed to slow. Danica felt a familiar calm settle over her, years of training taking over. She caught Deja's eye. A lifetime of silent communication passed between them in that split second. Deja moved first. As Logan reached to shove her again, she shifted her weight, redirecting his momentum. Her hand shot out, catching his wrist in a perfect lock. Before he could process what was happening, she twisted, using his own force to slam him face first into the fence. Simultaneously, Danica dropped into a low stance. Brent's grip on her skirt gave her the perfect pivot point. She spun, her legs sweeping out in a precise arc that caught him behind the knees. As he stumbled, her elbow found his solar plexus with surgical precision. Chase backpedaled, his phone clattering to the ground. "Wait! I didn't—" Danica was already moving. 2 quick steps brought her within range. Her palm strike to his nose was almost gentle, just enough force to break cartilage without causing permanent damage. Blood sprayed. Logan tried to push off the fence, but Deja had his arm hyperextended. She applied just a fraction more pressure, making him gasp. "Stop! Please!" he wheezed. Brent was curled on his side, struggling to breathe. Each shallow gasp sent spikes of pain through his ribs. Chase sat in the dirt, blood streaming between his fingers as he clutched his nose. The entire exchange had taken less than 10 seconds. Deja released Logan's arm with a small push, sending him stumbling. He caught himself against the fence, eyes wide with shock and fear. The twins stood straight, their movements precise and controlled as they adjusted their uniforms. Not a hair was out of place. Their breathing remained steady, unchanged. 3 phones lay scattered on the ground, screens cracked but still recording. Danica picked them up one by one, deliberately dropping each into a nearby puddle. "Our aunt taught us more than just dancing," she said softly, her voice carrying in the stunned silence. The boys stared up at them, their earlier bravado replaced by confusion and terror. Blood dripped from Chase's nose, marking his white Letterman jacket. Brent made small whimpering sounds as he tried to stand. Logan just gaped, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Deja brushed some dirt from her skirt, her movements unhurried. "You should probably get some ice on that," she told Chase, gesturing to his nose. Her tone was almost kind. The twins gathered their practice bags, movements synchronized as always. Their posture remained perfect, shoulders back, heads high, just as they'd been taught both on the mat and off. "If anyone asks," Danica said calmly, "we were just stretching, right?" None of the boys responded. They didn't need to. The message was clear in their wide eyes and trembling hands. Without another word, Danica and Deja turned and walked away. Their steps were measured, controlled. Behind them, they could hear Brent's ragged breathing, Chase's muffled sniffling, and Logan's soft groan as he slid down the fence. The back lot returned to silence, broken only by the gentle splash of water as the phones sank deeper into the puddle, their screens flickering out one by one. The whispers started before first period. Danica noticed them as soon as she and Deja walked through Millstone High's front doors. Students huddled in clusters, conversations dying as the twins passed. Some stared openly, others quickly looked away. "Did you hear?" A sophomore girl whispered too loudly to her friend. "They went crazy on the football team. I heard they're like secret ninjas or something," another student muttered. Deja kept her head high, but Danica saw her sister's jaw tighten. They'd expected this, but the way truth twisted in the hallways still stung. "Collins sisters." A sharp voice cut through the murmurs. Ms. Peterson, the front office secretary, stood at the end of the hall. Her face was pinched with disapproval. "Principal Harland wants to see you. Immediately." The twins exchanged glances. Without a word, they followed Ms. Peterson through the administrative wing. The click of her heels echoed against the polished floor, a countdown to confrontation. Principal Harlan's office door was already open. She sat behind her massive oak desk, hands folded precisely in front of her. Vice Principal Wexler hovered nearby, clutching a manila folder like a shield. "Sit down, girls." Principal Harlan's voice was silk over steel. She gestured to 2 chairs positioned directly under the harsh fluorescent lights. The twins sat, backs straight, hands folded in their laps, mirror images of composed dignity. "We've had some disturbing reports about yesterday afternoon," Harland began. "3 of our star athletes claim they were viciously attacked, unprovoked." "That's not what happened," Deja said quietly. "Really?" Harland's eyebrow arched. "Because Chase Dunning has a broken nose. Brent Ashford has bruised ribs. Logan Mitchell's wrist is sprained. Would you care to explain that?" "They cornered us behind the gym," Danica replied evenly. "They were filming us, making threats, grabbing at our clothes." "Where's this video?" Wexler interrupted, speaking for the first time. "If they were filming, surely there's evidence." "Their phones fell in a puddle," Deja said. Harland's laugh was sharp, dismissive. "How convenient. And I suppose the security cameras in that area just happened to malfunction yesterday?" The twins stayed silent. They'd noticed the camera's red light was already dark when they'd arrived at their stretching spot. "This is a serious matter," Harland continued. "We have 3 respected students with documented injuries. We have your history of confrontational behavior." "What history?" Danica's voice remained calm, but her eyes flashed. "We've never been in trouble before. Your attitude during practices has been noted," Wexler chimed in. "Coach Thompson mentioned you've been resistant to feedback." "The football coach?" Deja frowned. "He's never even spoken to us." "The point is," Harland cut in, "violence cannot be tolerated at Millstone High, especially not from students who represent our school as cheerleaders." She pulled 2 letters from her desk drawer, sliding them across the polished wood. "You're both suspended for 2 weeks, effective immediately. This will, of course, make you ineligible for the next competition." "But they attacked us!" Deja's composure cracked slightly. "We were defending ourselves." "Without a single witness or piece of evidence?" Harland's smile was cold. "Against 3 boys who've never had any disciplinary issues, who maintain stellar GPAs and are being scouted by Division I schools. So their future matters more than our safety?" Danica asked quietly. Wexler shifted uncomfortably, but Harland's expression hardened. "I'm protecting this school's reputation. If you can't understand that, perhaps Millstone isn't the right fit for you." The threat hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. "Your father has been notified," Harland continued. "You're to leave campus immediately. Any attempt to contact the other students involved will result in further disciplinary action." The twins stood in perfect unison, their movements controlled despite the anger burning in their chests. They took the suspension letters without a word. "Remember, girls," Harland called as they reached the door, "choices have consequences." The drive home was silent. Their father had already left for work, but Aunt Renee was waiting in the kitchen. Her calm presence filled the room as the twins sank into chairs at the table. "Tell me everything," she said simply. They did. Every detail, from the initial taunts to the final confrontation. Renee listened without interruption, her expression thoughtful. When they finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached for her laptop, opening it with deliberate care. "Did you know," she said casually, "that I spent 20 years as a civil rights attorney before I retired? Specialized in cases of institutional discrimination and abuse of power." The twins stared at her. "The principal probably thinks she's protecting her school," Renee continued, fingers moving across the keyboard, "making the problem go away quietly. But she's about to learn something important." She looked up, and for the first time, the twins saw a fierce light in their aunt's eyes. "This isn't about discipline," she said, her voice hard with certainty. "It's about control. Now they've picked a fight with the wrong family." The next day, Isaiah Grant sat hunched at the library table, his fingers nervously tracing the edge of his sketchbook. The library was nearly empty. Most students had rushed home after the final bell. Only the soft whir of the ancient ceiling fan broke the silence. Deja slid into the chair across from him, while Danica took the seat beside her, placing a small notebook on the table. The twins had changed out of their cheerleading uniforms into simple t-shirts and jeans, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. "Thanks for meeting with us, Isaiah," Deja said softly. She'd noticed him in her art class, always quiet, always alone, always watching. "We appreciate you being willing to talk." Isaiah glanced around the library, then down at his hands. "I saw what happened," he mumbled. "With Brent and them. Everyone's saying you attacked them for no reason." "We know that's not true," Danica replied, her voice gentle. "And we think you might know something about how they really act when teachers aren't watching." Isaiah's shoulders tensed. He opened his sketchbook, flipping through pages of detailed drawings, mostly superheroes and manga characters. His fingers stopped on a half-finished sketch of Spider-Man. "It was last semester," he began, still not looking up. "I answered a question in AP History before Brent could. Just a simple thing about the Civil War. He got mad, said I was trying to make him look stupid." Danica's pen moved quietly across her notebook as Isaiah continued. "After class, he followed me into the locker room. No one else was there. He shoved me against the lockers, said I needed to learn to keep my mouth shut." Isaiah's voice grew quieter. "Said people like me should know our place." "Did you tell anyone?" Deja asked, though she already knew the answer. Isaiah gave a bitter laugh. "Coach Thompson walked in right after. Saw me on the ground, saw Brent standing there. You know what he said? 'Boys will be boys.' Then he told me to toughen up." Danica wrote faster, capturing every detail. "Has anything like this happened to other students?" "Marcus Chen," Isaiah said. "They destroyed his science project last year, the one that was going to the state finals. And Jasmine Rodriguez, they spread rumors about her until she transferred schools." He finally looked up, meeting their eyes. "They always get away with it. Their parents donate too much money. They win too many games." "Not anymore," Deja said firmly. She pulled out her phone, opening the voice recorder app. "Would you be willing to tell your story again? We'll keep it anonymous, if you want." Isaiah stared at the phone for a long moment. Then he straightened his shoulders, just slightly. "Use my name," he said. "I'm tired of being quiet." For the next 20 minutes, Isaiah spoke into the recorder. He remembered dates, specific words, witnesses who'd looked away. With each detail, his voice grew stronger. When he finished, Danica showed him her notes. "Is this accurate? We want to make sure we get everything right." Isaiah read through them carefully, adding a few clarifications. Then he pulled out his own phone. "I have something else," he said. "Screenshots of texts Brent sent me after, threatening me if I told anyone." His fingers moved across the screen. "I saved them, just in case. Never thought anyone would actually care." "We care," Deja said softly. "And you're not alone anymore." Later that evening, the twins sat in Aunt Renee's study, surrounded by papers and open laptops. The room smelled of old books and leather, with walls lined with legal volumes and martial arts trophies, a perfect blend of their aunt's two passions. "Start with the chronological timeline," Renee instructed, pointing to Danica's notebook. "Each incident needs to be documented with as much supporting evidence as possible." Deja was already creating digital folders on her laptop. Isaiah's testimony, screenshots, dates of the locker room incident. "Good," Renee nodded. "But remember, no cloud storage. Everything stays on encrypted drives." She pulled out a small black USB stick. "This is your master copy. We'll make backups, but nothing goes online until we're ready." "What about social media?" Danica asked, showing her aunt the growing collection of racist memes and messages they'd found. "The football team's posts are full of this stuff." "Screenshot everything," Renee replied, "but don't engage or let them know we're watching. The moment they realize we're building a case, they'll start deleting evidence. The twins worked methodically, organizing each piece of evidence. Isaiah's testimony, the threatening texts, photos of injuries, dates of incidents, a growing list of other potential witnesses. Remember, Renee said, watching them work, this isn't just about punishment. We're building a pattern, showing how the school enables and protects certain students while silencing others. Danica looked up from her notes. Like a legal case? Exactly. Renee smiled grimly. They think they can bury this with suspensions and intimidation. But we're going to show them what real justice looks like. The study grew darker as they worked, but none of them noticed. Page by page, file by file, they were building something powerful. Something that couldn't be ignored or explained away. The morning sun filtered through the paper screens of Aunt Renee's dojo, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor. Deja and Danica stood barefoot in their white jizz, belts black as midnight wrapped around their waists. Sweat already dampened their hair, though they'd only been training for 20 minutes. Again, Renee commanded, her voice firm but calm. She circled the twins as they moved through the kata, their movements perfectly synchronized. Slower this time. Feel every transition. The twins began the form again, their feet whispering across the floor. Each punch, each block, each kick flowed like water, but Renee saw the tension in their shoulders, the slight tremor in their hands. Stop. She moved between them, adjusting Danica's front stance. You're thinking about them, aren't you? The boys? The school? The suspension? No, Aunt Renee, Danica said, but her eyes betrayed her. Yes, you are. Renee stepped back, studying both girls. I see it in your technique. You're fighting shadows instead of focusing on the moment. She tapped Deja's raised fist. And you're clenching too hard. Your knuckles are white. Deja relaxed her hand, exhaling slowly. It's hard not to think about it. Everyone at school is talking, taking their side. That's exactly why we're here. Renee moved to the front of the dojo, facing her nieces. This training isn't about fighting. It's about maintaining control when everything around you is chaos. She demonstrated the next movement, her own body flowing with decades of practiced grace. Watch my breathing. See how each motion starts from the center? That's where your power comes from. Not from anger, not from fear. The twins mirrored her movement, trying to match her rhythm. Sunlight caught the subtle ripple of muscle under their skin, highlighting years of dedicated training. Better, Renee nodded. Now, tell me what you learned yesterday. Keep moving while you speak. Isaiah Grant, Danica said, executing a perfect sidekick. He told us about Brent attacking him in the locker room. And, Renee pressed, watching their form. Coach Thompson covered it up, Deja added, her back fist cutting through the air. Just like they tried to cover up what happened to us. Good. What else? There are others, Danica continued, transitioning smoothly into a blocking sequence. Marcus Chen, Jasmine Rodriguez, we're making a list. And how do you feel about that? Deja's next punch carried too much force, breaking her rhythm. Angry. They hurt so many people and just got away with it. Exactly. Renee clapped her hands sharply. That anger is what we need to control. Channel it into precision, not power. She moved behind Deja, adjusting her stance. The system wants you to lose control, to prove their narrative about violent black girls. The twins continued moving through the kata, their breathing steadier now. Morning light filled the dojo completely, warming the wood beneath their feet. Remember, Renee said softly, every time you feel that anger rise, come back to your center, back to your training. She watched them complete the form, their movements now fluid and controlled. The real fight isn't won with fists. It's won with focus. They trained for another hour, sweat darkening their GIs, muscles burning with effort. Renee pushed them harder than usual, testing their limits, watching for any crack in their composure. Finally, she called a halt. The twins bowed, first to her, then to the dojo shrine. Their faces were tired but calm. The morning's tension dissolved through disciplined movement. "Good work," Renee said, tossing them each a towel. "Remember this feeling, this clarity. You'll need it in the days ahead." That evening, the twins sat cross-legged on Deja's bed, scrolling through their phones. The peace of the morning's training seemed far away as notifications kept buzzing. "Look at this," Danica said, turning her screen toward her sister. A video was spreading across local social media, already shared hundreds of times. Someone had edited the footage from behind the gym, cutting out everything except the moment Danica's fist connected with Chase's face. The caption read, "Watch these violent freaks attack innocent football players. RT to show everyone what these cheerleaders really are." Deja's hands tightened around her phone as she watched the doctored clip loop again and again. Comments poured in beneath it. "They should be arrested. This is what happens when you let thugs into good schools. My son says they started it. They're dangerous." The video had already reached thousands of views, spreading through their county like wildfire. Each share, each hateful comment, felt like another blow, not to their bodies, but to their truth. Monday morning hit like a slap to the face. Danica and Deja Collins stepped out of their father's car, heads high despite the hostile crowd gathering near Millstone High's front entrance. Parents clutched protest signs with messages like, "Keep our children safe," and "No violence in our schools." "Just keep walking," Danica whispered to her sister, gripping her backpack strap tightly. Their footsteps echoed across the parking lot, drawing every eye. A local news van from Channel 8 had parked near the school sign, its satellite dish raised like an accusing finger. In front of the camera stood Mrs. Ashford, Brent's mother, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the morning light as she dabbed at non-existent tears. "These girls viciously attacked my son and his friends," her voice carried across the lot. "They're trained fighters who used their skills as weapons. What kind of school allows such dangerous students to—" Deja's jaw clenched, but Danica touched her arm. They'd practiced this with Aunt Renee all weekend, staying calm under fire, letting the lies roll off like water. Inside wasn't much better. Students parted before them in the hallway like they were carrying something contagious. Whispers followed in their wake. "I heard they broke Chase's nose in 3 places. My mom says they shouldn't even be allowed back. Probably on steroids or something." At their lockers, someone had taped printed screenshots from the edited video, with "thugs" scrawled across them in red marker. Danica carefully peeled them off, folded them, and tucked them into her pocket as evidence, just as Aunt Renee had taught them. "Look who decided to show up!" A sharp voice cut through the hallway chatter. Madison Pierce, head of the PTA and Chase's mother, stood with her arms crossed, designer handbag swinging. "I've already called an emergency meeting. We'll see how long you two last after that." "Good morning, Mrs. Pierce," Danica said evenly, her voice carrying just far enough for nearby students to hear. "We look forward to sharing our side of the story at the meeting, including the full video footage." Madison's perfectly lined lips twitched, but before she could respond, the first bell rang. Students shuffled to class, leaving the twins standing alone in the emptying hallway. Their morning classes passed in a blur of cold shoulders and pointed silence. Even teachers who'd once praised their work now avoided eye contact. During third period, Deja caught Brent smirking at them from across the room, his phone constantly buzzing with supportive messages. At lunch, they sat alone at their usual table. The other cheerleaders huddled at the far end of the cafeteria, throwing nervous glances their way. Coach Riley passed by without acknowledging them, her shoulders tense. Remember what Aunt Renee said? Danica murmured, picking at her sandwich. They want us to crack. To prove them right. Deja nodded, but her eyes kept drifting to where Logan, Chase, and Brent held court at their table, laughing and playing the victims. The bruises on Chase's face had faded to yellow, but he touched them dramatically whenever anyone looked his way. The afternoon brought more protests. Parents lined the school entrance, phones raised to film the twins as they left. Someone shouted, "Go back where you came from!" Another voice called out, "Criminals!" Their father waited in the car, knuckles white on the steering wheel. He'd wanted to confront the crowd, but Aunt Renee had insisted they stick to the plan. Document everything. Build the case. Wait for the right moment. That evening, they gathered in Aunt Renee's study. The walls, lined with law books and martial arts trophies, seemed to absorb the tension from the day. A knock at the door announced Carmen Lee's arrival. Carmen, sharp-eyed and practical in her pressed blazer, had known Aunt Renee since college. She set her recorder on the desk and studied the twins with experienced scrutiny. "Show her," Renee said quietly. Danica opened her laptop, pulling up their carefully organized evidence. The unedited video showing the boys' harassment, screenshots of threatening messages, testimonies from other victims, photos of the vandalized lockers. Carmen reviewed everything silently, taking notes. Finally, she looked up. "This is solid. The kind of story that could go viral, but not just locally. This could hit national feeds." "Good," Deja said firmly. "Not good," Carmen corrected. "Not yet. You need to understand what that means. Right now, you're dealing with school bullies and angry parents. If this goes wide, you'll face death threats, doxing, racist trolls from across the country. Your whole lives will be under a microscope." The twins exchanged glances. Danica reached for her sister's hand. "The question isn't whether I can help you," Carmen continued, closing her notebook. "It's whether you're ready for what comes next. This kind of exposure, it changes everything. Forever." Carmen's article dropped like a bomb at exactly 9 a.m. She'd timed it perfectly, right when parents were settling into work, when students were checking their phones between classes, when the morning news teams were hunting for fresh stories. The unedited footage played in crystal clarity. Logan, Chase, and Brent stalking the twins to the back lot. Their crude comments, the first shove, the grab at Danica's uniform, then the clean, controlled response that lasted mere seconds. Beside the video, Carmen had woven together a devastating narrative. Isaiah Grant's testimony about Brent's locker room assault. 3 other students of color describing similar incidents. Screenshots of the racist memes. Documentation of the school's pattern of protecting certain athletes while punishing minorities. By 10 a.m., Search Stand with the Collins twins was trending across Georgia. By noon, it had spread to neighboring states. "Look at this," Deja whispered during lunch, showing her phone to Danica. Their usual empty table had suddenly filled with supporters, mostly other minority students who'd been silent before. The petition for their reinstatement had just crossed 15,000 signatures. The football players' table was notably quiet. Logan kept his head down, furiously texting. Chase's mother had pulled him out of school early. Brent paced the hallway between classes, snapping at anyone who looked his way. Principal Harland made an announcement over the PA system about maintaining order and avoiding social media speculation. But the dam had broken. Students openly shared the article in class. Teachers whispered in the break room. Coach Riley stood in her office doorway, arms crossed, watching it all unfold with a tight expression. By 3 p.m., the signature count hit 22,000. Local news vans circled the school like sharks. Mrs. Ashford's tearful interview from yesterday now played alongside the full footage of her son's harassment, making her claims ring hollow. Don't engage with any reporters, Aunt Renee reminded them as they left school. Let the evidence speak for itself. At home, they watched the numbers climb. Carmen's article had been picked up by major news sites. Civil rights activists shared it. Celebrity athletes retweeted it. By dinner, they'd passed 30,000 signatures. "You girls did good," Marcus said quietly over dinner, pride mixing with worry in his eyes. "But stay alert. Some people don't like being exposed." They tried to sleep, but their phones kept buzzing with notifications. Support messages poured in from across the country. The hashtag had gone national. At midnight, the sharp crack of breaking glass jolted them awake. "Girls, stay upstairs!" Marcus's voice carried from below. Danica and Deja rushed to their window. 3 figures in hoodies were running from their driveway. Their father's car tires lay flat, slashed open. Red spray paint gleamed wet on the concrete. "Thugs," in jagged letters. Marcus stood on the porch, baseball bat held loosely at his side. He wasn't chasing or threatening, just standing guard, protecting his home. But red and blue lights were already flashing at the end of their street. "Drop the weapon!" An officer's voice crackled through a megaphone. "Hands where we can see them!" "This is my property," Marcus called back calmly. "Someone just vandalized." "Drop the bat now!" The twins watched in horror as 3 police cars squealed into their driveway. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn, shouting contradictory commands. Marcus slowly placed the bat on the porch and raised his hands. "There are security cameras," he said clearly, nodding toward the corners of the house. Another of Aunt Renee's precautions. "They'll show who did this. I was just protecting my family." But they weren't listening. An officer kicked the bat away, while 2 others roughly cuffed Marcus. They ignored his attempts to explain, reading him his rights as they pushed him toward a patrol car. "Dad!" Deja screamed, starting for the stairs. Danica grabbed her arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Record everything." Their phones steady despite shaking hands, they documented it all. The officers refusing to take their vandalism report. The way they treated their father like a threat while ignoring the real crime. The growing crowd of neighbors filming from their lawns. Aunt Renee arrived just as they were putting Marcus in the back of a patrol car. She immediately started making calls, her voice sharp and professional even in her hastily thrown-on clothes. "Carmen, they just proved our point. Get your camera team here now, and call Judge Martinez. Wake him up if you have to. They're about to learn exactly what kind of family they're dealing with." The twins stood in their doorway, phones still recording, as the police cars pulled away with their father. Their driveway glowed red in the emergency lights, the spray-painted slur standing out like a wound. "Send everything to Carmen," Aunt Renee instructed, already dialing another number. "Every second of footage." They thought the article was bad? Wait until America sees how they treat a black father protecting his home. The morning sun cast long shadows across the police station parking lot as Marcus Collins walked out, shoulders tight but head high. Aunt Renee stood waiting by her car, while Danica and Deja rushed to hug their father. "I'm okay," he assured them, his voice hoarse from a sleepless night. "Just tired." The drive home was silent. Marcus stared out the window, his wrists still showing faint marks from the handcuffs. The twins sat in the back seat, phones buzzing constantly with messages they couldn't bring themselves to check. Their driveway was clean now. Aunt Renee had called a pressure washing service at dawn. But the slashed tires remained, a stark reminder of last night's violence. Camera crews lingered at the end of their street, held back by police tape. Inside, they gathered around the kitchen table. The morning light felt too bright, too normal for what they'd just lived through. Aunt Renee made coffee while Danica pulled up Carmen's latest article on her tablet. "The footage is everywhere," she reported quietly. "Both attacks. The boys at school, and what happened here. People are furious." "Good," Deja said, her voice sharp. Let them see. Let them all see what happens when black girls defend themselves. When a black father protects his home. Marcus rubbed his face. I just stood there. Didn't move. Didn't threaten. Still ended up in cuffs. Because they don't want peace, Deja continued, her hands clenching into fists. They want obedience. They want us quiet, accepting whatever they do to us. Aunt Renee set coffee cups in front of each of them, her movements precise and controlled. Then we give them justice instead. She pulled out her laptop, opening files they'd never seen before. I've been gathering evidence since the first incident. Not just about the boys, about the whole system. Principal Harlan's history of dismissing harassment complaints from minority students. Vice Principal Wexler's emails showing bias in disciplinary actions. The school board's pattern of protecting certain athletes while punishing others. How did you get all this? Danica leaned forward. I have friends who care about justice, Renee replied. Former clients, other attorneys, teachers who've stayed quiet too long. Once people saw you girls standing up, they started sending me everything. She turned the laptop around. Spreadsheets showed years of disciplinary data, broken down by race. Emails revealed covered-up incidents. Performance reviews documented complaints that vanished. The Department of Education has a civil rights division, Renee explained. They investigate patterns of discrimination in schools. One incident might be dismissed, but this is systemic. Marcus studied the screen. You've been building a case this whole time. Since the moment they suspended the girls, Renee nodded. Everything that's happened, the viral videos, Carmen's articles, even last night, it all proves the pattern. They protect white violence while criminalizing black defense. Deja stood up suddenly, pacing the kitchen. So we're not just fighting 3 racist boys. We're fighting the whole machine that lets them act this way. Exactly! Renee's voice held steel. Those boys are symptoms. The disease is deeper. And now we have proof. Danica scrolled through the files, her analytical mind piecing it together. The football team's disciplinary records compared to other students. The lost security footage, the way they handled our suspension versus white students involved in fights. Plus, witness statements, Renee added. Isaiah Grant wasn't the only one. I have testimonials from dozens of current and former students, parents whose complaints were ignored, teachers who were pressured to change grades for certain athletes. They worked through the morning, organizing evidence into categories, harassment patterns, abuse of power, false reporting, racial disparities in punishment. Marcus made more coffee while the twins typed up their own detailed statements about both incidents. By evening, their dining room table had become a war room. Laptops, documents, and legal papers covered every surface. Carmen came by with fresh footage from the police station, showing how differently they'd treated Marcus compared to white homeowners reporting vandalism. This is bigger than us now, Danica said quietly, watching Aunt Renee prepare the final complaint. This could change things for everyone at Millstone. That's the point, Renee replied, her fingers steady on the keyboard. Justice isn't just about punishing wrong. It's about fixing the system that allowed the wrong to happen. As night fell, they gathered around Renee's laptop one last time. The complaint was comprehensive. 47 pages of evidence, testimony, and legal arguments. Statistical analysis proving racial bias. Video documentation of selective enforcement. A clear pattern of institutional discrimination. Ready? Renee asked, her cursor hovering over the submit button. The twins clasped hands under the table, just like they did before every competition. Marcus placed one hand on each of their shoulders. Together, they nodded. Renee hit submit. The Department of Education's Civil Rights Complaint Portal confirmed receipt with a simple message. Case number assigned. OCR 2023-1142. Now what? Deja asked. Now, Renee said, closing her laptop with quiet finality. We show them what real strength looks like. The school board meeting room buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and spilling into the hallway. News cameras lined the back wall, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. Danica and Deja Collins stood at the podium, matching white blazers over black dresses. Their braids were pulled back neatly, every detail of their appearance calculated to counter the violent thug's narrative. Aunt Renee sat in the front row, a thick folder in her lap. Marcus Collins stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching Principal Harland and Vice Principal Wexler shift uncomfortably at their table. Board President Thompson cleared his throat. You have 3 minutes for public comment. Deja stepped forward first, her hands steady on the podium. The microphone picked up her clear, controlled voice. You punished us for not being afraid. The room fell silent. Even the camera operators leaned forward. When 3 football players cornered us behind the gym, you expected us to cower. When they grabbed at our clothes and pushed us against a fence, you wanted us to cry and beg. When they filmed it all, laughing, you thought we'd stay quiet to protect ourselves. She paused, letting the words sink in. Several board members wouldn't meet her gaze. Instead, we defended ourselves. We used our training, the same training we've practiced since we were 6 years old. We didn't hurt them permanently. We didn't use excessive force. We simply stopped an attack. Danica moved beside her sister, pulling up photos on her tablet. The images appeared on the large screen behind them. The racist meme from the locker room, screenshots of threatening messages, security footage, timestamps that mysteriously disappeared. But self-defense wasn't the story you wanted to tell, Deja continued. Because when black students stand up, you call it aggression. When we protect ourselves, you label us violent. When we refuse to be victims, you make us into villains. Principal Harlan started to speak, but Board President Thompson held up his hand. The 3-minute timer kept ticking. We've spent the last week gathering evidence. Deja's voice grew stronger. Not just about our case, about every student of color who's been silenced. Every incident swept under the rug. Every double standard in your disciplinary policies. Danica advanced through more slides. Graphs showing racial disparities in suspensions. Redacted emails about protecting certain students' futures. Witness statements from other victims of harassment. Isaiah Grant was shoved into lockers for answering questions in class. Maria Rodriguez had her art projects destroyed while security cameras were malfunctioning. James Chen was told to take a joke when students mocked his accent. The crowd murmured. Several teachers in attendance nodded slowly. But the football players who did these things, they got warnings, counseling sessions, second chances. Their futures were too important to risk with actual consequences. Vice Principal Wexler tugged at his collar. Principal Harlan's face had gone from pink to red. Then they vandalized our home. Deja's voice cracked slightly. Sprayed racial slurs on our driveway, slashed our tires. And when our father stood on his own porch to protect us, the police arrested him instead of the criminals. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled frantically. We're not here asking for special treatment. Deja straightened her shoulders. We're demanding equal protection, equal justice, equal respect for every student's dignity and safety. Danica stepped to the microphone. It was rare for her to speak publicly, and the room leaned forward. The Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights received our complaint this week, she said quietly. 47 pages of evidence, witness statements, statistical analysis. They've already assigned an investigator. Principal Harlan's face went from red to white. But you have a chance right now, Danica continued, to start fixing this before they force you to show that Millstone High actually believes in protecting all its students, to prove that justice matters more than protecting bullies with good throwing arms. The timer buzzed. Board President Thompson reached to cut off the microphone, but the crowd's reaction drowned out any possible interruption. Parents stood up, applauding. Students who'd come to support the twins began chanting, "Collins! Collins! Collins!" The board members looked at each other, papers shuffling nervously. Principal Harland whispered urgently to Vice Principal Wexler, who seemed to be trying to make himself smaller in his chair. Board President Thompson tapped his gavel weakly. We will conduct a thorough internal review of all disciplinary procedures and bias complaints. The chanting grew louder. Aunt Renee smiled slightly, watching Principal Harland and Vice Principal Wexler gather their things quickly, avoiding all eye contact as they headed for the side door. "Collins! Collins! Collins!" The twins stood tall at the podium, shoulders back, heads high. They didn't smile. They didn't need to. The truth had been spoken. The evidence was public. The system that had tried to silence them was now squirming under the bright lights of exposure. Camera flashes lit up the room like lightning as Principal Harland and Vice Principal Wexler slipped out the door. The chanting continued, drowning out Board President Thompson's attempts to restore order. "Collins! Collins! Collins!" The morning after the board meeting, Carmen Lee stood outside Millstone High, her microphone steady as she addressed the camera. Behind her, students streamed into the building, many wearing homemade Stand with the Collins Twins t-shirts. In a dramatic development following last night's explosive school board meeting, Millstone High School has placed Principal Dennis Harland and Vice Principal James Wexler on immediate administrative leave, Carmen reported, her voice crisp and professional. This decision comes after mounting evidence of systematic discrimination and failure to protect minority students. Inside the school, the atmosphere crackled with excitement and tension. Teachers whispered in hallway clusters, while students checked their phones constantly for updates. The Collins twins weren't present. Their suspension wouldn't be officially lifted until the following week. By lunchtime, the school's official statement appeared on their website and social media. Carmen read it live on the afternoon news. Following serious allegations regarding disciplinary procedures and student safety protocols, Millstone High School has placed Principal Harland and Vice Principal Wexler on paid administrative leave, pending a thorough investigation. An interim administration team will ensure continued operations. The school board is committed to addressing all concerns raised regarding equal treatment and protection of our diverse student body. Carmen's camera panned to show the empty parking spots where Harland and Wexler usually parked. Notably absent from this statement is any comment from District Superintendent William Morrison, who has declined multiple requests for interview regarding his oversight of Millstone High's disciplinary policies. The next day, more details emerged. Security cameras that had been malfunctioning suddenly worked perfectly under the interim administration. Files that Harland had marked misplaced appeared in perfectly organized folders within the school's digital system. Carmen stood in front of the district offices, her expression serious. Sources within the school board confirm that digital forensics experts have recovered dozens of deleted emails between Principal Harland and various coaches, showing a pattern of intervention in disciplinary cases involving certain athletes. The football team practiced without Logan, Chase, and Brent, who had been temporarily suspended pending their hearing. Their teammates looked subdued, no longer laughing or shoving each other between plays. The cockiness that had defined their behavior had evaporated under the harsh light of scrutiny. On the third day, Carmen interviewed several students who had come forward with their own stories. The camera focused on Isaiah Grant, his voice steady as he described the locker room incident. Brent would wait until no teachers were around, Isaiah explained. He'd say things like, "Know your place," or "Stay quiet," while shoving me. When I reported it, Wexler told me I was being too sensitive about rough housing. Maria Rodriguez showed the remains of her damaged art portfolio. They ruined weeks of work, but the cameras were supposedly broken that day. Principal Harland said without evidence, "It was just my word against theirs." The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. Logan, Chase, and Brent arrived separately with their parents, all wearing suits that couldn't hide their nervousness. The school board had appointed an independent panel, including 2 civil rights attorneys and an educational policy expert. Inside the hearing room, evidence mounted on the projector screen. Screenshots of group chats showed the boys planning their harassment. Recovered video files revealed their edited versions next to the original footage. Their phones, subpoenaed as part of the investigation, contained hundreds of racist memes and threatening messages. Chase cracked first. His voice shook as he admitted everything: the planned ambush, the vandalism, the coordinated social media attacks. Logan sat stone-faced, while Brent's father argued loudly about his son's promising future. But the evidence was overwhelming. Text messages showed Logan orchestrating the attack behind the gym. Time to put them in their place. Brent's social media was full of racial slurs and boasts about terrorizing unwanted students. Chase's phone contained the original, unedited video of their assault attempt on the twins. The panel deliberated for less than an hour. Their decision was unanimous: immediate expulsion for all 3 students. Their athletic scholarships, contingent on maintaining good behavioral standing, were automatically revoked. Carmen reported live from outside the hearing room. This marks a significant shift in how Millstone High handles allegations of harassment and discrimination. The panel specifically cited the overwhelming evidence of premeditated harassment based on racial animus in their decision. The boys and their parents left separately, avoiding the cameras. Logan's carefully maintained facade had crumbled into barely controlled rage. Brent's father shouted about lawyers and appeals. Chase walked out last, shoulders slumped, finally looking like what he was: a teenager who had made terrible choices and lost everything because of them. Inside the empty hearing room, the evidence remained displayed on the screen. Hundreds of messages, dozens of videos, years of documented harassment. The truth, once hidden behind missing footage and lost files, now stood in stark, undeniable clarity. The gymnasium buzzed with nervous energy as students filed in for the special assembly. Rows of metal chairs filled the polished floor, where just weeks ago the Collins twins had practiced their award-winning routines. Now, those same chairs held nearly 1,000 students, all waiting to witness something unprecedented at Millstone High. Ms. Elena Delgado, the interim principal, stood at the podium wearing a crisp navy suit. Her presence was different from Harlan's, where he had projected authority through intimidation. She radiated a quiet dignity. The microphone squealed briefly as she adjusted it. "Before we begin," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I'd like to welcome back Danica and Deja Collins." The gym doors opened. Danica and Deja entered together, wearing their cheerleading uniforms. The room fell silent. They walked with perfect posture, shoulders back, heads high. Their father, Marcus, sat in the front row, next to Aunt Renee, who wore a small, satisfied smile. The twins took their seats in 2 chairs placed near the podium. Ms. Delgado cleared her throat. "What happened at Millstone High over the past month has exposed serious failures in our system," she began. "As your interim principal, I want to address these failures directly and publicly." She turned to face the twins. "Danica, Deja, you were failed by the very institutions meant to protect you. When you defended yourselves against harassment and assault, You were punished. When you spoke up about discrimination, you were silenced. When you presented evidence of systematic abuse, you were labeled as troublemakers. Several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, remembering their own silence during those days. On behalf of Millstone High School and the entire district, I offer you our deepest and most sincere apology. Ms. Delgado continued. Your strength in standing up for justice has forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about how we handle discrimination, harassment, and student safety. She gestured to a row of adults seated nearby. The new disciplinary committee, including 2 civil rights advocates and a student counselor specializing in trauma support. Because of your courage, we are implementing immediate changes, Ms. Delgado announced. First, a new zero-tolerance policy for racial harassment and discrimination. Second, mandatory bias training for all staff and faculty. Third, a student-led diversity council with real power to address concerns and recommend policy changes. Danica and Deja sat perfectly still, their expressions composed, but their eyes bright with unshed tears. In the audience, Isaiah Grant nodded slowly. Maria Rodriguez gripped her art portfolio tightly. But policies alone aren't enough, Ms. Delgado continued. We need a fundamental shift in our school culture. The days of protecting certain students while ignoring the suffering of others are over. Every student at Millstone High deserves to feel safe, respected, and heard. She paused, looking out over the assembled students. To those who witnessed harassment and stayed silent, this is your moment to choose a different path. To those who have been afraid to speak up, we are finally ready to listen. Marcus Collins wrapped an arm around Aunt Renee's shoulders. They watched as Ms. Delgado stepped away from the podium and walked to stand directly in front of the twins. Danica and Deja Collins, you are formally reinstated to Millstone High School, with all privileges restored. Your suspension will be expunged from your records. The championship trophy your squad earned will be displayed prominently in our main hall, with your names listed as team captains. A few students began to clap. The sound spread slowly at first, then built into a thunderous applause. Ms. Delgado raised her hand for quiet. But more importantly, you have taught us all a valuable lesson about courage, dignity, and the importance of standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. She stepped back to the podium. Would everyone please rise? The sound of 1,000 chairs scraping against the floor filled the gym. Danica and Deja stood as well, their movements synchronized as always. Danica and Deja Collins, please accept our apology, our gratitude, and our promise to do better. You may return to your regular class schedule tomorrow morning. The twins moved toward the center aisle. Students turned to watch them pass, many still clapping. Near the front row, a young black girl in a junior varsity cheerleading uniform stared up at them, her eyes wide with wonder and admiration. She couldn't have been more than 14, but she stood as tall as she could, shoulders back, mirroring their posture. The applause continued as Danica and Deja walked the length of the gymnasium, their steps measured and graceful, their heads held high. Saturday morning sunlight streamed through the rec center's dusty windows. Aunt Renee helped Danica and Deja tape flyers to the walls near the entrance. The paper was simple, black text on white background, but the message was bold. Free self-defense class for girls. Taught by Danica and Deja Collins, every Saturday, 9 a.m., 11 a.m. All skill levels welcome. Learn to stand strong. You sure about this? Renee asked, smoothing a wrinkle from one of the flyers. Teaching isn't easy. We're sure, Deja said, adjusting her black G. The crisp uniform still carried the sharp scent of fresh cotton. Girls need to know they have options. Besides, Danica added, rolling out blue practice mats across the wooden floor, you taught us. We learned from the best. Renee smiled, touching the worn black belt at her waist. Teaching self-defense isn't just about moves. It's about confidence, awareness, knowing when to fight and when to walk away. The twins nodded. They'd arranged the room carefully. Mats in a wide square, mirrors cleaned, first aid kit ready. A stack of fresh white t-shirts sat folded on a table, printed with "Stand Strong" across the front. "We know," Danica said. "That's exactly why we're doing this." The rec center's old clock ticked toward 9. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. The first student arrived, the young junior varsity cheerleader from the assembly. She wore gym shorts and looked nervous. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Jasmine. Is this the right place?" "Perfect timing," Deja smiled. "Come on in. Grab a shirt." More girls filtered in. 2 friends from the school newspaper. A quiet sophomore who always sat alone at lunch. 3 middle school students who came together, whispering and giggling. A tall basketball player. 2 sisters who lived down the street from the Collins family. Each girl took a shirt, changed in the locker room, and returned looking both excited and uncertain. They formed a loose circle on the mats, some standing close together, others maintaining careful space. Renee watched from a folding chair in the corner, her expression thoughtful. The twins had arranged everything themselves. Permission forms, insurance waivers, even a basic curriculum based on their own early training. "Welcome, everyone," Danica began, her voice carrying clearly across the room. "We're here because every girl deserves to feel strong, safe, confident. Some of you might have heard about what happened at school," Deja continued. "But this isn't about fighting. It's about knowing your worth and standing up for yourself." The girls nodded. Everyone had heard the story by now. It had spread through social media, local news, even a few national blogs. The Collins twins had become symbols of resistance and dignity. "First rule," Danica said, demonstrating a basic stance. "Your body belongs to you. No one has the right to touch you without permission." "Second rule," Deja added, "your voice matters. Never let anyone tell you to be quiet when something's wrong." They moved through simple exercises. How to stand firmly. How to breathe when scared. Basic blocks and escapes. The girls watched intently, mimicking each movement. Jasmine, the young cheerleader, raised her hand. What if someone bigger tries to hurt you?" "Good question," Danica answered. "Size isn't everything. Technique and confidence matter more. Here, let me show you." She demonstrated a simple wrist escape, moving slowly so everyone could see. The girls paired up, practicing carefully. Renee walked among them, making small corrections to stances and grips. "Remember," Deja called out, "the goal isn't to fight. It's to be strong enough that bullies think twice before starting trouble." The hour passed quickly. The girls grew more comfortable, asking questions, helping each other. Even the shyest ones began to smile as they mastered basic moves. Near the end of class, Renee stepped forward. "Ladies," she said, "I've been teaching martial arts for 30 years. What I'm seeing today, this strength, this focus, it makes me proud. You're not just learning self-defense. You're building community." The twins exchanged glances, remembering their own first lessons on these same mats years ago. How Renee had taught them that true power came from discipline, not anger. From standing together, not standing alone. "Line up," Danica called. The girls scrambled to form 2 rows, still a bit awkward, but trying their best. "Next week, we'll learn more," Deja said. "But for now, remember what you felt today. That confidence, that strength, it was always there. We're just helping you find it." The twins moved to the front of the mat, their movements perfectly synchronized. 10 pairs of eyes watched intently, ready to follow their lead. "Let's get to work," Danica said, smiling. The regional cheerleading competition buzzed with energy. Fluorescent lights gleamed off the polished gym floor as teams warmed up, their uniforms a kaleidoscope of school colors. But all eyes kept drifting to the Millstone High corner, where Danica and Deja Collins stretched in perfect sync. Their red and white uniforms were crisp and bright against their dark skin. The Millstone logo across their chests seemed to shine brighter now, reclaimed. Around them, their squad moved through familiar routines, but something felt different. The air crackled with anticipation. "Channel 7's here," whispered Kelly, one of their teammates, nodding toward a news crew setting up cameras. "And look, those signs!" In the bleachers, a group of girls from their self-defense class held up poster board messages. "Stand strong," and "Collins Twins Inspire." They wore the white t-shirts from class, creating a unified block of support. Behind them sat other familiar faces, students who'd spoken up during the investigation, parents who'd demanded change, community members who'd rallied behind their cause. Danica adjusted her sister's bow, fingers steady and sure. "Remember what Aunt Renee said? 'Victory isn't about the trophy,'" Deja quoted, rolling her shoulders. "It's about staying true to yourself under pressure." Coach Riley gathered the team for final instructions. Her voice carried new respect when she addressed the twins. The whole squad had changed after everything. Closer now, more protective of each other. No more whispered comments or sideways looks. They'd seen what real strength looked like. "Ladies," Riley said, "we've practiced this routine 1,000 times. But today isn't about perfect moves. It's about showing who we really are." In the stands, Marcus Collins sat next to Aunt Renee, both dressed in Millstone colors. The charges against Marcus had been dropped after community pressure. Now he watched his daughters with quiet pride, his hands clasped tightly. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Next up, defending regional champions, Millstone High School." The squad jogged onto the mat. Camera flashes popped like lightning. Danica and Deja took their positions front and center, their poses mirror images of each other. The music began, a powerful beat that seemed to pulse through the floor. They moved as one unit, but everyone watched the twins. Each flip, each twist, each synchronized leap carried the weight of their story. This wasn't just a routine, it was a statement. Their bodies spoke of discipline, of dignity, of defiance wrapped in grace. Halfway through, during a complex pyramid formation, Deja caught a glimpse of Carmen Lee, the journalist who'd helped expose the truth. She stood near the judge's table, notepad in hand, smiling slightly. Next to her was Ms. Delgado, the new principal, who'd promised real changes at Millstone. The routine built toward its climax. The twins launched into their signature move, a series of aerial twists that had won them last year's trophy. But this time, each rotation felt charged with new meaning. They weren't performing for points or praise. They were showing everyone what it meant to rise above, to fight with excellence instead of anger. In the crowd, their self-defense students leaned forward, mesmerized. These were their teachers, their defenders, their proof that standing up didn't mean standing alone. Some of the younger girls mimicked the twins' arm movements, dreams of future possibilities shining in their eyes. The final sequence approached. The squad moved in perfect formation, building energy with each beat. Danica and Deja broke free, tumbling across the mat in opposite directions before spinning back toward center. Their timing was flawless, their movements sharp and clean. Time seemed to slow as they made their last leap. In that suspended moment, Deja remembered the fear behind the gym, the sound of glass breaking at their house, the sting of being labeled violent for defending themselves. Danica thought of quiet Isaiah, of Jasmine's nervous questions, of all the voices that had been silenced before. They stuck the landing in perfect unison, their final pose strong and unwavering. The music cut off. For a heartbeat, silence filled the gym. Then the crowd erupted. Their teammates rushed to embrace them. Signs waved in the stands. Camera lights flashed. But the twins kept their pose, hearts steady, eyes forward. In the bleachers, Aunt Renee stood, applauding with the measured pride of a teacher who knew the full depth of their journey. Beside her, Marcus wiped his eyes, clapping until his hands hurt. This moment wasn't given to them. They'd earned it, not just with kicks and punches, but with courage and conviction. With every documented incident, every testimony collected, every girl they'd taught to stand strong. Justice hadn't come easily. It had come because they'd fought for it the right way, with both power and principle. The twins held their final pose, breathing in the roar of the crowd, the flash of cameras, the pride shining from their father's face, and the quiet satisfaction in their aunt's eyes. They'd done more than win a competition. They'd shown that fighting back didn't mean losing yourself, that justice, when earned with dignity, echoed far beyond a single victory. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.